think we're streaming now on YouTube, so we're starting our meeting. Welcome everyone to our 2 weekly IPLD sync. We have a smaller group today. Welcome's not with us today due to public holiday. And yeah, we're just going to do a quick run through of any sync items that anyone who's on the call has. If anyone is watching on YouTube, you're welcome to join the Zoom and tell us about what you're working on. Otherwise, feel free to listen in. And yeah, so my updates first. I'll do my list since I'm first on the notes. So yesterday I was working on reviewing and testing out a pull request that Ghazala has had against the JS multi-formats repo for a while now, and it hasn't been done because it's initially it was a breaking change to the CID class, but we talked him off the ledge and we turned it into a backward compatible change, which is really interesting. So the main work was looking at is it actually backward compatible? Is it going to break anyone's stuff if we ship it like it is? And it does look like it will be. So the idea here is that the CID class gets an interface. The class stays as it is, but if you adjust your import slightly, then you get an interface instead. So you can use TypeScript or TypeScript annotations to specify the interface wherever you expect a CID to be given to you, rather than a concrete class. And that sort of brings us closer towards detaching from all these concrete implementations we have everywhere. CID is the main concrete implementation we have that is used by everything. And so if we turn that into an interface, then we get to more loosely couple things. So that's in the JS multi-formats repo pull request number 161. One of the ways I tried it out was using it in was updating the Bitcoin codec to it, which makes a lot of use of CIDs and does some really it has to parse and pass around and decode CIDs and do some other things with them. So pull request number 7 on the JS Bitcoin repo in the IPLD org uses the interface version of it where it can. And the interesting thing about upgrading this is that without these changes, then everything passes and it works just normal, which is good and what you want. So it means that it's not breaking, but you can opt for using an interface by changing your imports a bit. So it seems to work. So a little bit more work on that today, and then that will likely get in this week, I think. Yeah, so the next thing I did was merged a thing that I had up for a little while, which is a proposal to make Go IPLD prime's codex error if you try and encode a graph that has a link node that's got an undefined CID. So this is the case where the CID type's 0 value is called undef. It's got no bytes in it. And Go IPLD prime doesn't currently check for that. And the problem is that it'll encode invalid, mainly invalid CBOR when you do DAG CBOR. And when you do it with DAG JSON, it won't do a round trip. So it'll actually technically be invalid DAG JSON too. So instead of coercing, that was an option, we could coerce it to null. That sort of changes the kind, which we probably don't want. And especially if your field is not nullable, we're opting for erroring. So it just puts the onus on the data author to make sure that their CIDs aren't undefined, which is probably good practice anyway. I'm not aware of any places where this is a problem. I think those who have stumbled across this have done it through program error. That's pull request number 433 on Go IPLD prime. A little one, 432 on Go IPLD prime was an improvement to bind nodes schema inference, so it can infer schemas from your Go types a little bit more flexibly now. It can detect a few more kinds. Then that's 432, and then a bunch of other minor cleanups and fixes and reviews that I'm not going to list, but been trying to keep an eye on things and make sure that things get reviewed. And lastly, I want to drop a note that there's an interesting proposal from Doropo over on the multi-codec repo. So in the multi-codec table, pull request number 272 over in the multi-codec repo has a proposal for what he's calling an MSET, which is essentially just an identity multi-hash, but with some compression, which sounds a bit weird, but the use case is interesting in there, and there looks like there's been some discussion since I looked at it yesterday. So that might be interesting for some folks to look at and possibly engage in. And that's it for me. And then it's over to Mauve.
Yeah, hi. I've been kind of preoccupied with some other stuff lately, but thanks to Rod's help, we got the JSON patch spec that Borpork was working on in a place where we can merge the initial version. So I'm going to merge that today if no one has any other comments or concerns. So it's still kind of experimental. We haven't tested stuff like traversing links when doing patches, but it's kind of working. We have some tests. People are welcome to start playing with it. We've also merged the the IPLD URL schemes exploration report that I made a while ago. So at the moment, I'm not sure what the next steps are there. It might be cool to talk about that if there should be next steps. And then there's just some small docs things that I've been helping out with. As well, working on IPLD checklist for implementations, which there's a lot to it that needs to be rewritten, but now patch is going to be in there. That's about it. Oh, also been slowly progressing on putting together a grant proposal with the Can Labs folks that I think showed up last week to get IPLD Prolly trees standardized. So we're kind of figuring out what we're even going to do with that. And then I'm going to have a proposal together, and I'm probably going to talk to Dietrich from whatever team he's on in Protocol Labs to push that through. But there's a lot of potential for one thing we were thinking of including is having an IPLD indexed database that people could build off of as just like one of the examples that we build on top of Prolly trees. And we're just kind of figuring out whether that's going to be part of the grant or whether they're going to do that as their own thing. Yeah, that's about all I got.
Cool. Then Merton, you got an update for us?
Yeah. So I cleaned up and pushed the map type amender implementation. All the map tests are now passing. The list amendment was a little more complicated, and I'm almost done with that as well. Have one more test passing or left to pass. Once that's done, I'm gonna clean it up some more, add more comments, and then I'm thinking of adding more fixtures to cover more corner cases. That'll help test both implementations, and then might have to work with you, Mo, or Rod to figure out a way to do the benchmarking, and maybe y'all can recommend what would be the next step once this implementation is complete. So, but yeah, that's where I am.
Excellent. That'll go nicely alongside the patch stuff. So yeah. Okay. Has anyone got any major discussion items that they want to raise or go through? No.
I don't know if on record, but it would be nice if we could chat about the URLs a bit if anyone's interested in discussing. specifically next steps.
Sure. So what was the impetus behind that exploration report?
Yeah,
Because you're
so
working on the browser stuff.
yeah, so like one of the things I've been doing is finding ways to turn peer-to-peer protocols into URLs and interfacing with them with HTTP-like semantics, because it's a really useful way of linking to things and linking between things that are using different protocols. So originally we were even thinking of, I was also talking to the stewards team, to Lidl, about maybe getting some of these IPLD things into the IPFS gateway code base. Because right now they have like some IPLD stuff, but it's mostly for like downloading blocks from IPLD-ish URLs, but it's very rough and it feels very hacky. So part of the goal here was to make it kind of more of like, here's IPLD, here's the data structures, here's how you can reference them to get data out, but also how we can have a simple API for putting data in. And so that would work with gateway enabled things, say IPFS companion down the line, or Agrigore, or whatever other peer-to-peer web browsers out there. There's not a lot. Well, actually there's a bunch now. There's Capiloon. It's based on Firefox OS, or a great grandchild of Firefox OS that has IPFS integrated. So it's just like files are cool, but IPLD is also cool, and it'd be nice if it got like recognition as its own thing.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry.
That's about it.
I think Lidl is definitely the one that's been pushing this ahead the most. He's been working on things like car exports, and using content types to signal some of these things, because it really is a retrofitting exercise. We have the /IPLD namespace. I think that might be in the gateway. I know it is on some of the Go IPFS commands, but I don't think it's useful on the gateway. And there's been plenty of threads about how do we make this thing useful and use content types and stuff. And I don't think anything's matured like your exploration report has. So I think Lidl is certainly the one to push it forward there, particularly for the gateway. Where else would it? Was there anywhere else we could apply it, or is it really just a gateway thing and then in browsers separately?
Well, I was thinking it could be useful even in Go IPLD Prime as a way to work with data, because like right now, Go IPLD Prime is really great for like working with data structures, and like, we have all of these nice type systems, but I think there's opportunity for having just like a really, really high level API, which is just like URLs. And it's like, oh, I want to resolve this IPLD URL, and then it handles it. Or I just want to like patch some data into this IPLD URL and get something back. So I was thinking it might be useful to add something in there. I don't know how that feels though.
Yeah, it could fit nicely in the traversal package. I think patch has gone in there, and it is a form of traversal. So yeah, it makes sense. The update side is less so, but I think we're putting those the patch and update things in there as well. So it does make sense. And I wonder whether, I'm trying to think through whether the gateway touches Go IPLD Prime for these things, because we've got this in between state in the Go IPFS code base where we've migrated some of it to Go IPLD Prime, but some of the more raw block handling stuff is still using some of the older tools. But maybe adding this kind of functionality would be a way of getting some of those things in to the code bases.
Yeah, like if Lytle is interested, or if there's like buy-in from the gateway team, I don't know who's on it right now, in having like a /IPLD path that we can like document and make official. That could be cool. Like there is also the writable gateway spec in the gateway code base, which we could work off of to make writable IPLD down the line. Because I personally, I find the developer UX can be really nice when it's just like links and you're doing just CRUD operations on them,
Mm.
because it's like a lot less to learn and a lot less to kind of like have to figure out, compared to like, oh, I have like all of these different APIs and like a billion ways of doing things. I guess this is a billion and one way of doing things, like that XKCD comic,
Yeah.
but it's a billion and one way that's like unifies a bunch of different ways of doing it.
I wonder if Michael or any of the dot storage people are aware of the ideas here, because it could work on some of their APIs, because they're exposing stuff that's directly about dealing with IPLD. Their APIs really are IPLD heavy. So maybe, and they're focused on this kind of thing where, you want to have web access to IPLD data. So
yeah.
Mm.
I think URLs would be really nice. Well, I mean, I think URLs are still kind of like a fresh idea in the IPFS and IPLD space, because I think a lot of folks are still thinking just like raw CIDs or IPFS like paths rather than URLs. But I think there's a lot of potential to like double down. Obviously, I'm super biased, but I think URLs are just like, hey, here's a thing that exists and a lot of devs know about, and you just like learn that. And like there's potential for integrating with other tools. Like I know there's that FFmpeg integration with IPFS. I don't know if that was using paths or URLs, but it could be cool to like maybe see if we could even do IPLD URLs in there, or like other tooling. Or even as a meta thing. Like I was talking to Eric about this a while ago, and one of the things we were thinking is like, oh, could we like specify lenses as like CIDs or URLs to something? Like, could I link to a schema from within a URL? So it's like, oh, I want to link to this data with this schema being applied to it, or with this ADL, which I reserve some syntax for. Or Steve, did you have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, no, maybe some of this is all new, but just a few data things. So Dietrich, NU, and Lytle have been, well, so Mark is who's been kind of taking on integrating IPFS into different places like curl, FFmpeg, etc. And I think that grant and relationship is managed by Dietrich, but Lytle is heavily involved. So I know obviously you're talking with both of those guys anyway, but you can, if you have other ideas there on how to broaden, like they would be the ones to talk to for that particular zone. As I put in chat, we did get like official gateway specs actually out for PR. I don't know if you'd seen that yet or not, Mav. But Lytle just got that out, and I know he's going to be like coming around and pinging different people to give feedback on it. So that's just one thing in general about gateway specs. Then there is a IPFS, we're calling it IPFS implementers all thing. It's very focused on IPFS implementers in July. I don't know if an invite has been sent out to you yet or not on that, Mob, but it's it's more of a private event. This isn't the IPFS like big public. Sorry, this isn't IPFS camp, which was intended to be like a bigger production that we were, which is going to get postponed to later on in the year. This is more of a very targeted, focused on implementers, kind of like the workshop that you participated in a couple of weeks ago, but we're doing a gathering in Iceland in July for that. And I know for that gathering that Lytle in particular wants to show, like, we do have a specs process and a few cases have run through it. Next thing he's planning to add besides just these basic gateway specs is like how we add selectors into the gateway spec. And so it wants to show a couple of use cases where it's actually run through. So I say all of that, and maybe it's worth you syncing up with him in case you want to put out a spec for more IPLD things, because that would kind of fit in the narrative that he wants to show of like, hey, we have something out here, it's getting used by the community. Here's what, if others are wanting to do spec changes, like here's the process to follow, because look, a few people have already done it. So again, I don't know if you had all of that context, but just throwing that out there, because at least maybe now might be a good time to strike. The iron is hot in terms of discussion around gateways and specs, etc., and including some IPLD related areas.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll definitely get in touch there.
Cool.
But I'm guessing just like as IPLD folks, you're excited about this is what I was trying to gauge.
Rock on.
Cool. Yeah, I'll follow up on all that. Thank you.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to cover? Because if not, maybe we just wrap up. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll get these notes onto the IPLD team management repo afterwards. And anyone else that's watching is welcome to join and share your IPLD updates or join in with questions. Usually we pull questions from YouTube comments, but I don't have the access to that right here, unfortunately. But yeah, anyway, so thanks everyone for joining, and goodbye.